busting guns in Walmart right now. AK, somebody's got shot.
We've bleeped the profanity, but you can only imagine what was going through the mind of 26-year-old Army Specialist Alden Hall. He says he was standing in the produce aisle near one of the exits, heard the gunfire, ran toward the door, and saw the gunman lift his weapon and smirk.
When you turned and took off, how quickly after that did you hear gunfire?
Approximately 4 seconds after, and it hit the guy next to me.
How close was the man next to you?
Within arm's length.
Did he survive?
The first shot, yes, but not the second shot.
He took cover between the aisles of food. He turned back to help, but he realized it was too late.
It was fight or flight at that time. I just had to leave because I knew he was gone.
He says he bolted for the closest emergency exit. Other people were hiding under tables as bullets flew by them. Once outside, Hall says people were frozen in place, trying to keep calm. Others were attending to the wounded.
They were being taken out in the carts. It was like back to back to back.
Prosecutors say they will seek the death penalty for 21-year-old Patrick Crucius, seen here in surveillance photos walking into the Walmart with a rifle in hand. In a racist manifesto he allegedly wrote, Crucius expressed support for the Christchurch, New Zealand shooter and denounced the increasing Hispanic population in Texas.
We're going to do what we do to terrorists in this country, which is deliver swift and certain justice.
Alden Hall says he regrets not having his gun on him that day because he felt like he could have done something to intervene, and he's thinking about next time.
I didn't think that I would need an assault rifle or a bigger handgun, but after seeing that yesterday, all things are possible.
Are you planning to buy a bigger weapon?
This is an open carry state, so most definitely.
And David Begnaud, as we said, is with us now from El Paso, Texas. David, your interview with the shooting survivor is so powerful. How was he able to open up with you after such a horrific and traumatic experience?
Well, it was interesting because not only did he want to react to what happened, he wanted to give details. In fact, he said to me, I've done several interviews, but nobody asked me as many pointed questions as you did. And of course, I tried to do it as respectful as possible. But he said that he had felt cathartic for him to speak it all out and literally go through the details that were hard to listen to and hard for him to tell. You know, he is on active duty here in El Paso. He is a father of 3. He's originally from the New York area, and he does carry a weapon in his vehicle. But he said, David, my weapon, had it been in my car, would have been no match against the gun that man was carrying.
David, I want to ask you about the suspect. Remarkably, he was taken into custody alive. What do we know about charges that he may be facing?
Well, the investigation is being treated as one of domestic terrorism, which a lot of people in the public were saying, listen, why don't you guys come out and say exactly what it is early on? You should know that there is a process that federal authorities go through in terms of evaluating a legal statute before they declare something domestic terrorism. But they announced as early as yesterday, hey, listen, this is how we're treating it. As for hate crimes charges, I wouldn't be surprised if that gets filed within the next 48 to 72 hours. And all of that is based on the public manifesto that is already in the public domain. And not only the manifesto, but what the shooter said allegedly to police when he was taken into custody. There's a law enforcement source who tells CBS News not only is he cooperating, but he is giving information, not just yes or no answers. And our law enforcement source tells us that when the gunman was taken into custody, he told police he was motivated to do what he did because of his objection to Hispanic immigrants here in Texas.
And so, David, we know that the suspect was living near Dallas. He drove hundreds of miles to get to El Paso. Presumably what you're hearing from law enforcement officials is the reason that he wanted to go to El Paso is because it's a predominantly Hispanic community.
Right here on the border, we know that the Mexican president says 6 Mexicans have been killed, 7 more have been injured. I got a look at the names of people and the people who were injured here and died, and most, if not all of them, are members of the Hispanic community.
Yeah, and as I understand it, with the shopping area, there would be people who live in Mexico who just come over to shop. Mm-hmm. So this is a community that's very comfortable with the way the border works, very comfortable with the mixing of different cultures and different types of people. I know that there's a memorial behind the Walmart there. There are other memorials and vigils going on sort of across the country. Have you gotten a chance to speak to the people who live there, live in El Paso, and, you know, how are they reacting to this?
You know, I haven't gotten a chance to talk to them, but I have gotten a chance to turn around. And I have to tell you, just to stand here and look back at the memorial and see the balloons and the flowers and the candles that people have brought here. People come and they walk. People come and they stand. People come and they look. It's a very quiet place here. In fact, as we got here this morning, I noticed a man named Greg, who I still see, who unfortunately I've seen far too often. He is a carpenter from Chicago who has made more than 26,000 crosses since the mid-90s. His father-in-law was murdered, and after that he made a cross and put the father-in-law's name on it with a picture, and ever since then he has traveled to mass shootings around the country. I've seen him at Pulse nightclub in Orlando. I've seen him at the synagogue in Pittsburgh. I've seen him at the business complex in San Bernardino, and now here. He was in Las Vegas. If you can name the mass shooting, he's been there. He usually shows up in the middle of the night. He takes out the crosses that he made at home in Chicago, writes the name of a victim, puts a picture if he has it, and let me tell you what that means to the victims' families. I remember being in Orlando, and families, you guys, don't always go to the crime scene either because they don't want to or they're not allowed to. And so I remember in Orlando he put these crosses around a lake, and I remember seeing a Puerto Rican woman sit in front of that cross and just cry, because that really was the only place where she could see her son's picture, read her son's name, and grieve while the investigation went on. So those crosses are going to be placed right here by that man as he leaves here today and heads to Dayton, Ohio, the site of yet another mass shooting.
Yeah, David, when I covered the mass shooting in Chicago back in February of 2019, that man was there. And as you point out, what it does for the community, it actually places a name to this horrific act. In other words, it's not just a number that you're reading about in the newspaper or seeing on television. When you see the names of those individuals on those white crosses, people make a connection to what has happened there, and that's why it's so powerful and so viscerally moving. What is sad is that he has to continuously do it over and over again, and as David points out, he's heading to Dayton. David, thank you very much for your reporting.
Yeah, and I would encourage you, by the way, I just posted a 10-minute interview we did with him on my social media, so on my Instagram, for example. If you want to go and listen to it, it's a heartfelt story from an American who doesn't know any of these people personally, who just wants to be here to give some amount of hope to these families.
So let's just point out to our viewers, you can find David's reporting on his Twitter feed at David Begnaud and on his Instagram, and as well as his Facebook. David, as always, we thank you very much.
You bet.